What is crack-a-lackin', fellow thermonuclear AFers? I am Dan Favale, coming at you with my certified fantabulous, dripping with fantabulousness, co-host of the best podcast in the business, or so says Steph Curry.
Number one.
To every single episode. HardwoodKnocks. Grant Hughes, you're the co-host of that podcast. Makes sense. I know you and Steph are tight, so it makes sense that he would listen to every single episode. So we showed up on second, I believe, on his Spotify rap list. So that's really cool. Shout out there. I hope people get the bit. We're here to talk winners and losers of the 2024 NBA playoffs so far. Emphasis on so far. We recognize this can change, but we played almost a week's worth of basketball. Grant and I have watched exactly 0 minutes of it, but we figure we're going to deliver some takes and fakes on it anyway. But first and foremost, before we hop to it, Grant, how are you doing?
Just happy to be number one, just really.
Well, we're number two amazing on Steph's Spotify rap list. We need to.
Well, yeah, but those numbers. They change all the time. Like you say, our winners and losers may change. Like we'll be number one there. It's just kind of inevitable. Yeah, it's nice to just another episode. We haven't even put this one out yet as we're recording it, obviously. But I've heard people are saying that it's going to be probably our best one ever. So I'm excited about that.
The bar is high because our last episode was our best one ever,
right,
according to a bunch of people. And actually, the love on that episode was great, except there were some people. I like when people are in the comments. So we did, for anyone who didn't listen to it yet, the one thing that we got wrong about each NBA team. And there was this one, it was a shocker. It was a Pelicans fan in the comments that said, yeah, you did get this. Like what you said that you got wrong about the Pelicans. They said, yeah, you did get that wrong. Like, yeah, thanks, Chief.
We agree. Hey, look, common ground. That's how we bridge divides. We agree on something. Let's work from there.
We are recording this, as Grant mentions, though, before the games on Thursday. So anything we say about Knicks, Sixers, Cavs, Magic, and Lakers, Nuggets, I guess is technically subjects to change. But these feel, with the exception of Philly, Knicks, like these series just feel kind of over, and we know how the tenor of it is going to go. But I'll let you guide us. You want to go winner, loser? It's dealer's choice.
Okay, I'll take a winner. I thought this was more true after game one of this series, but he was good enough in game two that I think it holds. I think Damian Lillard is a little bit of a winner here. And that's based on, the narrative all season, which was I feel like narrative gets such a bad rap now because people use it as like a way to, I don't know. It's like a derogatory term, like, oh, you're caught up in the narrative. It's like, well, it just means like the story that people care about a team or a thing. The narrative was, yeah, the Giannis Dame chemistry hasn't really been there. Where's all the pick and rolls? Like, why isn't this working? Why does it feel my turn, your turn? Never clicked, right? And so Giannis being out, that's obviously objectively bad for the Bucks' chances. It's why we both picked the Pacers, I think, in large part, in addition to some other things with the Bucks. But this version of Damian Lillard that we've seen in games 1 and 2 is like, I know that guy. That's familiar. That worked. That worked for a long time. Like he built a Hall of Fame career around some spread pick and roll / pick and pop. Get downhill if you can, pull up for three if there's drop coverage, spray some passes around to open shoot. Like that's Damian Lillard's game, and he's really good at it. And it was good enough to basically end game one at halftime because he had 35 in the first half and just was daming all over the place. And then in game two, he had another, 34, I think. I should have the stats right in front of me. Yeah, had 34 points on 21 shots. So made some threes, made some free throws, was really good again, played 39 minutes. Like, yeah, the defense isn't great from him or the Bucks, generally speaking, in game two. But this is a Dame we know and love, and it's kind of nice when, as a fallback plan for the Bucks, we don't have Giannis at all, but even if we did, some of the chemistry just isn't quite there. But as a plan B, to have Dame just do the things that he's done for his whole career effectively, that's a nice fallback option. So it makes Dame look good. I think it doesn't I don't know if it changes what we think about this series. We could talk about that, but it's just nice to see a version of Lillard that still exists that we didn't really get to see a ton of this year, helping the Bucks kind of at least split those first two games.
There's just a weird element where I look at what he did this season, and maybe I don't know how much of it has to do with just the awkward synergy it felt like this team had, but a lot of it just comes down to, okay, well, when his jumpers are falling, because he's put a lot of pressure on defenses for them and even opened the floor, obviously, when he doesn't have the ball, just by virtue of being the threat that he is. Does it give you any pause, though, that this is kind of like the second time it feels like in the past couple months where it's Damian Lillard's a winner because Giannis Antetokounmpo is not playing?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the problem, like that with this whole team's construction. So it gives me a ton of like long-term big picture for the Bucks. Like this is not a good thing necessarily when Dame kind of looks and feels better by himself out there. But yeah, I just like for this series, because he is all they have, or, you know, they don't have Giannis. So this is going to have to be how it goes. The fact that they did get one of those games because Dame was really good, like, you know, it wasn't their plan, but it's a positive, I think, in some sense. But big picture, yeah, like the fact that they never really clicked is not a great sign. And the fact that the whole team didn't ever seem to really catch a rhythm.
That felt there. It feels like there's a roster construction flaw there, but I still would remain ultra confident if nothing nuclear happens, which depending on how the playoffs ends, we can't say it won't. Giannis and Dame are going to figure it out even more. But it's just, if you give them another training camp together, I honestly think that if they're together next season, I think we're going to look back on it. Like maybe it'll have a Timberwolves like feel to it from last year.
I love that call. I think too, like based on the way that Adrian Griffin had them defending to start the year, like how much faith do you have in him like putting the right offensive stuff in place for Dame and Giannis going into the season? So maybe it's just like, you know,
I think the larger concern is actually trying to change in or out the pieces around them, because it's just like they're just going to be so inflexible as a team that is, you know, taxed out to the high heavens. But immediately, no, I'm with you that Dame's been playing great, which he tends to do, and like he even had Dame time moments with the Bucks. This year's a ton, but you want to see him playing at this level consistently when Giannis is also available.
Yeah, and that's hard to do, right? Because if Dame is doing this, it kind of reduces. It's fine if it's Brook Lopez or Bobby Portis or whoever setting those screens and kind of like getting out of the way. But like you want Giannis to do more than that for this pairing to really work.
Can he also, and I'm not even trying to be like funny here, but can he actually get out of the way? Because it's like Bobby Portis and Brook Lopez have a stretch to them that Giannis doesn't quite have. And so he deserves credit for cleaning up his shot diet, the stuff with the passing. But I think those two, if you give them, like if they're going to be together next season, I'm not trying to insinuate anything sinister there. I think we'll look back on maybe not this and think it's a joke, but like, I just think they'll be infinitely better off than they were at this season.
I'm with that. I agree with that.
I will take us to a loser, and this is not one. You kind of knew what I had planned, but I don't think you knew that I had this one planned. I'm about to go on a little bit of a rant right here.
Oh, let's do it.
Losers are people who complain about officiating costing them games. You're objectively a loser if you're doing that. I'm not singling out Joel Embiid and the Sixers specifically, except I am. The whole officiating thing, we've seen this with the Lakers before. Or LeBron was griping about the officiating. You have 48 minutes of the game, if there's no overtime, to figure it out. They're not missing every single call. Human error happens. And like, that's part of the game. And I very much believe you can look at the Lakers free throw disparity relative to opponents if you want to go there. This stuff just balances out. And I'm going to use the Philly Knicks game as an example in game 2. The Sixers were in the lead for most of that game. And stuff went wrong during the final minute. And the NBA comes out. This is another loser, is the 2-minute report, because, oh, cool, there's transparency that you're admitting your mistakes. Nothing comes from it. Nothing comes from it. Like, it's just going to make fan bases angry because nothing's going to get resolved. But I'm still of the mind, and I honestly don't understand what it is about fandom that some people can't disconnect from this. There was 47 minutes of that game where they could have built a bigger lead or not blown the lead they had. That wasn't all down to officiating. And so yes, errors happen and they're going to be spotlighted and they're going to be gutting when it's in high stakes moments. And you don't want those to happen, but there will never be, you can't look at this and say, well, man, those 5 calls cost us the game. It's like, well, what happened during the other 40 minutes of the game? And that bugs the shit out of me. Also a loser, people that leak the grievances that are filed, not the people who are reporting, but the teams that are disseminating that information, knowing it'll get out. And this is like Daryl Morey's calling card. What the Sixers just did is not actually unique. It's unique that we just don't hear about it all the time. And the framing is just, it's tired. It's what are you trying to what are you actually trying to win here? Public perception, or you think it'll influence what the officials are going to do moving forward? I understand officiating is not perfect. And I understand that maybe this league has an officiating problem. There's certainly, we've talked about it, the way that they just shifted the way they were calling things without ever publicly acknowledging it, but then denying it, but then also acknowledging it at the same time. I'm not saying the officiating in the league is perfect here, but just enough is enough. There's never 1 or 2 or 3 calls that unless you're going back and forth and it's a 1 possession game the entire game, no 1, 2, 3 calls is actually going to be the reason that you lost. I'm just so I never understood, and I will never understand that part. I get it in the moment, this is a missed call, this sucks, but do you ascribe any validity to this idea that the officials can turn game, that these 1, 2, 3 call misses are just they're, as Adam Silver might say, that they're cardinal sins?
I think there are a couple things. I have more patience, which I agree with you. I'm sick of it. I don't want to hear any more of this. I have more patience for the player at the end of the game who is exhausted, is in a place where maybe they're being more emotional than rational. And they do things like Joel Embiid did, where it's unacceptable, head down, upset. Yeah, you're not your best self in those moments. You definitely might say some things that, if you were had your breath back and had some time to decompress and let the adrenaline subside, you might be more rational about it. To me, that's very different than a front office, and particularly because it's Daryl Morey and the Sixers, because they did the same shit with the Rockets all the time, I don't know. I imagine that him just spamming the league office with look at this wrong call, look at this one, and we lost this many games as a result, all these measurable things. I have way less patience for that, because I feel like that comes from a place of, if anyone is out there seeking marginal advantages wherever possible, it's lead executives like Morey, where it's what are the market inefficiencies we can exploit, in every possible area. Hey, maybe complaining to the league office is a market inefficiency we can exploit, and somehow down the line, like you said, it influences referee behavior somehow to our advantage. There's no downside to us. They're not going to fine us for complaining or whatever, as long as we do it within the rules. But it's it feels to me like it comes from a place that's kind of, it's hyper competitive, but it's also a little bit of bullshit, because you're just trying to find some edge that you don't deserve. So that rubs me the wrong way. The other thing that's wild to me is that okay, whether you're a player or an executive or an organization, you're complaining about the officiating costing you games. It's because the referees made mistakes. And unless you're going to say these mistakes are not mistakes and are instead motivated by some bias against us, this is where fan bases lose their minds, and say they want the Lakers to win because of the TV money or whatever. Unless you're willing to say hey, here's why these mistakes are happening. We think the league wants certain results and is influencing officials. Okay, if you're going to go out and say that, then I'm listening now, because that's a real accusation. You're saying a real thing. But if it's just complaining about mistakes being made, fuck off. I don't care. Players miss shots. Coaches don't call timeouts at the right time. Coaches don't
that's put the right quote card.
Everybody makes mistakes. The ref's job is hard. They're never going to get it all right. Nobody shoots 100% from the field every night. If anyone could identify with this is a difficult thing to get right all the time, it should be players, coaches, and executives. That's the name of the game. So unless you're willing to ascribe some nefarious motivation, enough. I don't want to hear it anymore.
I love that. Is the closest you have come to being irate on this podcast. I love it. And you did make a great point. I have actually more patience for what Joel Embiid did. And I don't know if he was upset or sick with his head down. I wasn't trolling that in the slightest, but I respect it when, if as the team leader, you're going to come out and say that. So it's not this, defeatist mentality where it's we're going to win this series. I respect that. I like it when coaches kind of suck up the fine and they'll complain. That stuff I totally understand. It's the actual belief, and it's mostly from fans. The players aren't coming up man, we would have won 4 more games this year if the officials didn't have it out against us. If you believe that there's an agenda against your team specifically or in favor of I don't have patience for that stuff. I'm kind of with you there.
Yeah,
I'm not kind of with you. I'm 1,000%.
We're in lockstep. Stop complaining. This is the podcast where complaining is not allowed. Although I'm sure all we do is complain a lot of the time.
We're complaining about people complaining. At the moment, so
that you can do. I want to pick a winner here, and I'm going to get on your corner a little bit again. I think Tom Thibodeau's unorthodox methods, or just like his approach in general, I'm obsessed with this idea. Has been like a winner. It's always fun to me when like, I don't know, a team building approach or like a coaching approach or a playing style or whatever that's supposed to not work, that the rest of the league, like, again, Thibodeau was in that player poll, like the coach that you'd least like to play for. Again, like he owns that category. Like, oh, he plays guys too many minutes. The rotations are too short. He cares too much about the game in front of him and not the big picture. Like that's a hindrance. Nobody else operates that way. I love it when that like looks like it's working and is also maybe creating like downstream benefits somehow. Like this is all just sort of me putting, beautiful minding things and like putting things together that maybe aren't there. But like, and I just thought about this earlier today, like the DiVincenzo shots, right, to win game 2, missed the first, made the second. This is a guy that was not a high volume 3-point shooter. And like he became one, right? Like there's lots of reasons for that. But I just think the idea that he succeeded, and I know I've talked to you about this. I've talked to everybody that'll listen about this. Like him just shooting that second 3 after he missed the first is my favorite moment of the playoffs so far, because a lot of guys won't shoot that. And like, I didn't think he would shoot that because I watched every game he played for the Warriors last year. And that's not a shot he would take, because it's like, oh, someone's got a better one. This is the wrong time. I'm going long on DiVincenzo. I'll circle back to the Tibbs thing, but like he was empowered to shoot that shot. Like that's not a shot you shoot unless you believe your teammates and your coach or whatever are confident that you should shoot it and that you'll make it. And he let it fly and he hit it. And so you tie that sort of empowerment to like Josh Hart playing every minute and the Knicks just killing everyone on the offensive boards and all these guys overperforming. Deuce McBride, like what? Like, where did this come from that he's suddenly like a guy, in the playoff series, hasn't been playing as much as the end of the regular season, but still like Jalen Brunson leveling up and just carrying an offense, like all this stuff where it's like, well, what if playing everybody 42 minutes a night gets them a bunch of extra reps? And it's just like, they're more confident with each other. They understand how each other play better because like maybe other teams that are staggering minutes and pricing in rest days and this and that and the other, like, you get half the reps by the end of the season with a certain set of teammates. And maybe like playing all those minutes, if you can hold up, like conditions you better to hold up against like playoff intensity. Like maybe short rotations are the way to go if you're really trying to, like, there's all these things that Thibodeau has done that get like criticized because they're outside the norms and outside the trends. And it's like, yeah, generally you want to be kind of going with the majority, but like, it's really fun when the sort of out of step, like when the zag really feels like it's working. I'm not saying it's going to continue to, but I'm just so into the idea that Thibodeau is like succeeding with all of his like firmly held principles that nobody else believes in anymore. Like that's a fun angle to me.
Yeah. And I mean, look, to his credit though, also, and part of this, it feels, was born from necessity. He's more flexible than he ever was.
Sure.
Like look at how small they just play at the 4, even during the non-Julius Randle minutes when Randle was healthy, trying out 3-guard lineups, the way they've used Isaiah Hartenstein, just the 3-point volume in general. Like with DiVincenzo on previous iterations of Tom Thibodeau specifically have had the green light that he does with New York. And the answer is no. So that's a really big deal. And it's funny because I thought they needed to fire Tibbs. It was like 7 or 8 games into last season, not this season. And I think there are some people that still might believe he's not the coach to get them over the hump or to maximize. But you're also looking, and everything you just laid out it's inarguable at this point. And, you mentioned that player poll. It's sort of, is he like the Patrick Beverley of head coaches in a sense? Or maybe Patrick Beverley's not the right, but it's like everyone seems to dislike him from the outside or have gripes with him from the outside. But then when you're playing for him or playing with him, I'm trying to think of what the player analog would be here, where it's everyone seems Draymond Green.
It might be Draymond, yeah.
From the outside, but if you play for him, you would die for him almost. Although the Warriors have seemed fed up with him. at points.
Well, but think of what they've put up with. Like your point is right. Like you don't put up with that for anybody else.
Right. And so that's interesting. And part of it you could say is, well, he has players, which is true, that kind of embody his ethos, where it's like Josh Hart's just a psychopath.
Right.
That dude is just, I don't know if he's ever going to come out of a game. I mean, I guess we'll know because they're playing after we record this. But so like in Jalen Brunson is just, there's a gap in NBA coverage right now. Oh, here comes another very quick rant, but where we've been so conditioned to think that talking about transactions is wrong and we need to focus on the game, that it has in a way helped dehumanize these players a little bit. And so what I mean by that is when you're focusing solely on the X's and O's and the nitty gritty of the coverage, I miss and we still get this, thank God for Mir and Fader at The Ringer, who's just able to put out these fantastic, but I love those pieces. Remember Howard Beck? He's been one of my favorite writers forever. And all of a sudden he's bouncing around. He still does this great work, but it doesn't feel like we're as interested or that type of coverage gets a lot of shine. These Knicks are that type of coverage. There's just, I had written about this the other day, and I'm not necessarily one to hang my hat on the way to frame this, but at what point do we look at these Knicks, at these Thibodeau, at Tom Thibodeau specifically, and stop saying, oh, the Knicks are kind of existing on the margins when you look at, he's playing Josh Hart too many minutes and they only have this one star, and just accept that maybe they're just deep, have the right mix of talent, and there's a connectivity there that you can see it with the Thunder in some of their post-game interviews. And so this Knicks team is special in the sense that, no, I don't expect them to come out of the East, and yes, some things have broken right for them, but they've also dealt with injury and turnover at the top of the roster all year that other teams, even relative to the injuries and turnover everyone's dealing with, has kind of exceeded that. And I just don't, you could say Thibodeau gets the most out of these situations. I just don't think I've ever seen a more malleable, or I hesitate to use the word innovative. So let's just, flexibility is the one. I've never seen a more flexible version of Tom Thibodeau than I've seen right now.
I mean, I think to his credit too, this is just another way to frame what you're saying is he's got what he's got in terms of personnel. And so he's been willing to just say all right, well, what is the best way that this group of guys can play? And it's Josh Hart's never going to come out of the game. We're going to shoot a ton of threes. We're just what we got are some offensive rebounders and guys that hustle, and we can shoot a lot of threes. And that's what we'll do. If the roster were different, I'm fairly confident, because he's coached very different rosters in the past. They would play differently. That's, I mean, we talk about this all the time. One of the marks of a really good coach is willingness to just make the best out of what your roster happens to be and not try to shoehorn a roster into a style you prefer. So, I mean, that's a credit to him. I wanted to ask you though, because I'm about as non-local to New York as it gets. I'm on the other side of the country. You being closer, when I'm watching specifically in game 2, but throughout the series and definitely during parts of the regular season, there's something that feels to me I can't remember since 30 years ago watching maybe some of those early 2010s Melo teams with Jason Kidd there, and really the last semi-successful stretch for this franchise. But you got to go back to the 90s to where Madison Square Garden is really buzzing. There's this, the fans are all in on this team. And I think it's partly because of how gritty the team is and how hard they play, and how, just the identity feels it just feels right to me that there's a Knicks team that's playing this way. Is it being embraced that way? Or is that just me from too far away trying to impose something on a fan base?
No, I don't think you're superimposing anything over them. I will say this definitely feels different, but there was also that kind of feeling during the Julius Randle most improved player campaign, to where it's not that this team was free from this. That's what's interesting is that team did not have the same expectations that this team did. And that's what makes this Knicks team also special, is that there was expectations coming off of what they did last year, where they overperformed relative to expectations. And now it's, there was people like me who were kind of pumping the brakes, hey, progress isn't linear unless they're going to make a big trade. Don't expect them to win more games. They won more games anyway, while being dealt a less ideal availability hand overall. So no, you're absolutely right that there's just, it's embracing just kind of the essence of this team, but also the fact that it's happening after last season when they were already good, and it laid the groundwork for these immediate expectations that now they haven't just met, but they've arguably, we'll see how the playoffs end, but it seems like they're exceeding.
Yeah, I'm into it. So you gotta I don't want you to have to keep picking losers. I feel like if we're
I was
alternating,
going to go to a winner, so why don't you go to your first loser?
Where do I want to go with a loser here? I like being positive, Dan.
I just like
all right. I'm gonna say okay. This is kind of a roundabout loser, and it's gonna turn out being positive anyway. Anthony Davis feels like a bit of a loser to me because he's had 2 really good games against the Nuggets, and it's just like, and I think we talked. I think I said before this series started that like there's a possibility we'll emerge from this Nuggets versus Lakers series having seen the Nuggets sweep the Lakers, and we can still say like Anthony Davis is the best possible guy to throw out there against Denver. Like that's it. Nothing about getting swept would change that, I don't think. And like that's where we're going because Davis has been amazing and is overmatched like at the same time. And it's just kind of like demoralizing for the Lakers for sure. But for Davis, I imagine in particular, because it's like what, I was surprised he was not a top 3 defensive player of the year candidate or a finalist. And he certainly could have been. He wasn't, right? He didn't make the top 3. It was
Wemby,
like
Rudy, and was it Bam?
Yeah, which is
I
fine.
think one of my top 3. So obviously that's
right. Correct.
Yeah.
But like, I think Davis is just as good as you can hope for as someone to throw at Jokic and the Nuggets in general. And it's just like, it's not good enough because Jokic can just back him down if he needs to. And like, as influential as Davis is around the basket on guys, trying to finish layups, it's not enough. It's not enough. And that like, I can't get over feeling sort of bad for him, even though he's been incredible. Like, what was he, 14 of 19 in game 2 or something ridiculous like that? Like 32 and 14 in game 1 with like 4 or 5 blocks. He's just like playing great.
I saw people, and I don't have a problem when players necessarily do this, where he's talking about how have I never won defensive player of the year type deal. I mean, it's a little odd, but when you look at who else has won it, has there been a defensive player of the year? So Marcus Smart maybe is the one you point to, like just during recently. It's like, well, could that have gone a different direction? It's like, well, should Davis? I don't even know how many games he played that year. So I don't have an issue though with what he's saying, but then he goes out and like people are trolling him with that quote when Jamal Murray hits a ridiculously tough game winner. Or it's, what was it? What else was AD supposed to do? And I'm sure there could be because we live in the actualist world of all this. Well, if his hips were turned like 12 more degrees.
It was like perfectly contested. And he's 7 feet tall. Like it's a microcosm of the series. Like he did everything you could ask him to do, and it just wasn't enough. And so it's like, you got to miss me. I didn't see the criticisms of like, oh, you got cooked on that game. It's like,
I didn't see it like, but I saw like there was a few quote tweets of the screenshot of his comment about defensive player of the year with Jamal Murray or that. And like, I even made the joke, but it was more of a compliment to, did you see the Darvin Ham quote where he was just like on defending Jokic, where it's like, fuck, I don't know what to do. Yeah. So I said Anthony Davis guarding Jamal Murray on that final possession. But that's like, it was meant more so as, what else are you supposed to do?
What do you do? Yeah. It's like, you don't see a lot of teams and players as good as Davis and the Lakers just kind of looking like, I mean, they barely lost game 2, right? Like it's as close as margins get. And it's just like, it feels
hang
hopeless.
The banner.
You can't do anything. You can't do anything.
Right. And oh man, I don't want to focus on, I haven't, of all my like pre-prepared stuff, I'm about to deviate again because you said something that I've been kind of thinking about for a while, and I've even alluded to it a little bit on the podcast. A loser in all this, do you think it's these star heavy teams, like top heavy teams, to where I'm not saying depth all of a sudden matters in the playoffs to where Mark Daniels is going to empty his bench even when it's not a blowout, but I'm looking at the Lakers and it's not even necessarily a payroll thing. They made some missteps building out the roster around LeBron and AD, but you can't just have these 2, let's say top 10 guys, or even 3 like top 25. I mean, Beal's not a top 25 player anymore, but my point being, you look at these teams, look at the teams that have invested like heaviest in the top, where it's the Bucks. I know Giannis is absent right now, where it's the Clippers, where it's the Lakers, where it's and maybe invested is the wrong word because some of these are missteps, where it's Phoenix. As we're recording this, exactly none of these teams are leading their series at the moment. And you could chalk it up to, well, Kawhi missed like game 1 of the Clippers. Well, that's the game that the Clippers won. So it's just like, well, like, what are we doing here? my whole thing is just, do you look at it now? And this is not this almost predates because we haven't really felt the implications of what I love that Keith Smith of Spotrac calls this the super tax. Fuck the second apron. I love the super tax term. It's not just a super tax thing. It's that if we is the league so talented, coaches so creative to where it's like, okay, you can have these really high paid guys on your roster, but if you're not going to have the right, and I won't even say right, but ideal supporting cast around them tailored to their needs or to at least optimize the collective, that you just can't get by not being able to do more inventive stuff to where they're even, let's use the Suns and Timberwolves series as an example, where it's Kevin Durant as a failsafe. And it's just like, okay, whatever. And wouldn't it be cool if Phoenix was able to do more creative shit to take more threes? And people are so inclined to blame coaching a la Frank Vogel, but it's like, you look at these players and if it's one, they're not taking the right shots, or just you don't have the right personnel around them because they're so shallow because you went all in or you just made missteps in team building. I get that I'm kind of, I don't mean to make this, good teams are better than bad teams, like teams that were built. What I'm saying is it feels like the stuff on the margins matters more than it ever did before. And the people who are so invested in the idea that these 2 or 3 guys can get us by and overcome either a lack of functional flexibility, which, when you have Kevin Durant on offense, as dynamic as he is, he's not limiting, but it's very clear that you're not going to use him in all these different wild off-ball actions. And even if you do, it's kind of not with a lot of movement type deal. And I'll wrap it up here, I promise. Do you get that sense that this is that model is kind of not that these players are going to be devalued, but it becomes more paramount to, okay, if this is the guy, then we need to hit on the supporting cast to make sure that we're as malleable as possible elsewhere. Am I just kind of jumping the shark here?
No, I think there's a couple things working here. One of which is I think we would both agree that you still need several superstar level guys and certainly a top 5 guy to win a title. That's not going to change. But I think I do take your point, and I think it's interesting to think about so if you pull together, Phoenix is the example, I guess, probably that's top of mind. You pull together 3 guys that are different players, but ultimately you're playing kind of fantasy basketball a little. It's how it feels is let's get, let's just say Beal is a top 25 player. I don't think he is either, but it's let's get 3 top 25 guys and we'll figure it out. Okay, that one, you cost yourself the depth of talent that you need, especially in the playoffs to some extent, right? You don't need a 12th guy in the playoffs, but what you do need are guys that can't be exploited, guys that don't have clear weaknesses, because those are the guys that playoff teams hunt, right? I think Bob Myers a couple of years ago said you just need someone who doesn't give the other team an obvious flaw to exploit. He doesn't have to be great at anything, but he can't be bad at something that, because in the playoffs that just can undo an entire scheme, right? Or give another team an opportunity to just negate your talent advantages elsewhere. So that's one thing. I think the Suns are a great example of that. In addition to the 3 guys just not really fitting well together and having been thrown together fairly recently and not having a lot of reps, all that stuff's in play, you got a minimum salary guys playing playoff minutes, and they're going to have more because Grayson Allen sprained his ankle again. So just the roster construction side of it, I think is just harder because you can't fill out a roster unless you get really lucky. You'd have to hit on so many, 6, 7, 8, 9th guys. So I think that's part of it. I think too, maybe your point about coaching is just better and the tactics are smarter and teams are more willing to exploit every frailty in the playoffs. So that just makes it harder to sort of compete if all you have are those top guys and you're kind of thin elsewhere. So it's all kind of a piece, but I definitely, I'll go into the Suns as a loser here because I think it's logical to kind of tie them to it.
We might need to break it up with some winter talk. Negative so far.
Well, I'll pivot. No, do you have anything to add? I think you're right. I think the top heavy thing, it feels flimsier than it has in a long time.
We should frame it as these teams that have depth are winners. Is depth a winner in the play? Just kind of looking at
or that that have complementary pieces and that have guys that don't give you an opportunity to exploit them. That's another way to talk about depth.
I do have a winner that will lead us into the Suns.
Okay.
My winner is the Minnesota Timberwolves, just in sum. I think, look, to me, proof of concept was not a burden they ever should have needed to ferry entering the playoffs. They just won 56 games. They had the league's best defense and spent the majority of the year atop the Western Conference. Now, they didn't finish atop the Western Conference, and this core, fully healthy, is new to the playoffs. So there's still that level of curiosity, but to look at them when they just had the league's best defense by basically a mile and have this doubt and look at Phoenix and say, they're built to stress test their defense because of their shot makers, because of the shots that they want to take, the Timberwolves are going to give them. And you were the one that pointed this out to me. And the piece is not live, so I hope that you were correct. But like the Suns entered that series as favorites, correct? Like the odds-on favorites. And it's, well, the Timberwolves offense can gum up and look at the turnover issues, and Karl-Anthony Towns is coming back from a meniscus injury. We just saw 82 games of the Suns like showing us who they were, which is talented at the top, shallow everywhere else. The league's preeminent explorers of both extreme peaks and desolate valleys. But we decided the Timberwolves, who just had more of an higher end equilibrium, even when things weren't going to go, even when Karl-Anthony Towns went injured and they were still pulling out victories. It might have been imperfect. It was happening. Now you're up 2-0 on the team that was just almost universally considered the less than ideal matchup for you. And I'm not saying people didn't not have a point about, well, Phoenix might be able to do this, but this like lingering doubt that the Timberwolves were anything but a legitimate threat to come out of the Western Conference. But like, weren't they just the team that the Nuggets said? I'm not even ascribing my own thoughts here, that the Nuggets said were the toughest out they had in the West last year. And so now to come in, and you know what? Karl-Anthony Towns has been chaotic at points. Like, he's done the thing where he throws the passes and you have no idea where it's going to go. Questionable decisions. You have Naz Reid. You've seen him cool off on the offensive end. Guess what? You have Nickeil Alexander-Walker. You have, after I'm yelling about Jaden McDaniels, and then he goes and hits every single two-pointer known to man, creating off the dribble. Shout out to, we had a few Timberwolves fans. I think they commented, someone added me on Twitter, someone DM'd me, thanking me for going on a Jaden McDaniels rant because he clearly heard it. And the podcast was recorded like before he had that game, so I don't think he heard it. But I love when fan bases are that self-aware, is all I'm saying. So that was really super cool. But you have Anthony Edwards, who is just this, like, he is on the court. He is just someone who can go toe to toe at both ends with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker and emerge as the one that looks better off for it. You have Rudy Gobert, who still moving as well as I've ever seen him, but Rudy wasn't a liability ever in the playoffs so much as he just had no perimeter defensive talent around him. Now you give him a bunch of perimeter defensive talent around him, and look at what's happening. And so the Wolves are huge winners here. And I'll also say this is why too, not just because, like, in theory, the third place team shouldn't gain anything from beating the sixth place team, just emotionally or any equity there. But here's what's going on in the background: the battle for control of the franchise, and then this financial sustainability of the core that is going to be an issue depending on how that plays out, or an issue regardless. People want to continue talking about that. And here are the Wolves. And by the way, we've talked about the super tax concerns with them, so I'm not excluding us from maybe being part of the problem. We haven't focused on it, I don't think, as much as others. So that stuff is happening, and you're just coming out and taking like that. That's a legitimate distraction to me. If you're like, if we had a producer who was talking about maybe like, oh, can we afford both Dan and Grant? And with your salary demands, when you poo-pooed that $80 million contract,
probably not. Probably not.
So I'd have an existential crisis if, like, we're still tasked with doing the job, but that it could be. I get that it's happening at a scale where it's not as mission critical as someone's necessarily livelihood, but they're just taking care of business here. And I think they're massive winners through it all. And also a big not a side winner, but like Tim Connolly having the option of getting out of his deal with, like, he's a huge winner now because look what he did with this roster. And he has like phantom equity in the team. That was the other report that came out. So he might not actually have like a ton of equity. So he might be more willing to leave, which gives him leverage if they want to keep him around. So I think the Timberwolves, though, immediately just looking at this postseason trip, are huge winners.
I think that's right. I would say too, like, what's happened in these first two games and the way the Wolves have looked and the way that, like, none of what we sort of priced into a Suns potential upset has happened really makes me Now, look, it's so easy in any series, like when the first couple games go a certain way, to just be like, every prior I had is clearly wrong, and like none of that was going to hold up. But like for this series in particular, I think you're right that it's just like it got overthought, and not just by us, but by like everybody. Because, well, did you pick the Suns? I think I picked the Suns.
No, you picked the Suns. I picked the Timberwolves,
Okay.
and I think
Well,
I had
then
them
you're
in
fine.
6.
You're fine then.
No,
like,
because they're probably going to win in 4.
you're in better shape than I am. But for me and for everybody else and the odds makers that made the Suns favorites, it's just like, maybe just trust the bigger sample. Maybe just don't overthink the matchups and all this other stuff. Now, next year, probably we'll have a situation where the reverse will be true. And we didn't think hard enough about the matchups and how this team is good at X and the other team is bad at Y. And that means they can't, like it'll flip. But for now, it just feels like we overthought. Like, why are we taking a lower seed over a Wolves team that was just better all year and just didn't have the lows? Like, so I want to talk about the Suns a little bit more. I know we're kind of picking on them, but like, let me start with a question. The Suns and Matt Ishbia is specifically the Suns owner is going to come out of this, I think, looking like one of our postseason losers. When you think about like the example of, man, do you remember when they put this team together, like how bad it seemed at the time and how catastrophic the downstream effects were going to be? Like, what do you have a go-to example? I can give you mine that I like, and that a lot of people kind of like pull to mind when trying to talk about like what a catastrophe that whole like team building era was. Like I go like the Brooklyn Nets when they traded for Garnett and Pierce and Darren Williams and like gave up their draft future for a bunch of old guys that like, and it just set the team back for years and years until they just landed superstars. You know what I mean? Like, do you have another example of that comes to mind?
No, I mean, like there's smaller scale stuff. Like I still want a book to be published on the Carmelo Anthony trade negotiations in 2011, where the Knicks just kept throwing stuff at the Nuggets, even though Melo didn't want to go anywhere other than them. But like, no, I don't think on. Because even the Nets, when they got the way that ended with Kyrie, Durant, and Harden, that was different because one, they were able to recoup value on 2 of those guys on the way out, and also they didn't have to give up a ton to get Kyrie and Kevin Durant in the first. Like it was cap space, and they were able to keep like Karis LeVert and Jared Allen were still on that team when they signed those guys. Yeah. So I think
you're gonna have one soon because you're gonna reference the Suns that we're currently watching as that team. This is not new information. You know this. Everybody else knows this. To put this roster together, they grossly overpaid for Kevin Durant, gave up all these picks, Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, this, that, and the other. They are the only team willing to take on Bradley Beal, so they give up all the rest of their swaps, and they take on this contract that still, I think, is among the worst in the league just because of the no trade and because of the money left and because of the type of player that Beal is at this stage of his career. They don't control a draft pick till 2031. They are in the super tax. They don't have the ability. They're going to be heavily restricted by like all of the new teeth that come in with second apron teams in terms of like who you can and can't trade, whether you can aggregate salaries, like all these things are going to further hinder them building rosters. That's part of the reason I think Grayson Allen got that extension is it's like, well, we don't have resources to do anything else. So we got to just keep this guy. And maybe they do that with some other players with extensions, but like there aren't any outs here. Things look really bad 2 games into this series. If you're saying it'll be fine next year when Kevin Durant is a year older and Bradley Beal is a year older and you don't have the means to bring in the type of supplementary talent you need to avoid what's happening here. And even if you do, it's also possible that these 3 players just don't make sense together in the biggest game. So like this all happened. Dan, they were in the finals in 2021. They won 62, 64 games in 22. And then Ishbia kind of takes official control at the 23 trade deadline. And now here's where we are. Like Devin Booker's like the only guy left from those good teams. Maybe you had to break them up. Maybe nobody was listening to Monty Williams anymore. Maybe you don't want to hang on to Chris Paul. Maybe DeAndre Ayton is not someone you build around. But to go from that to this, and then looking at the next 7-8 years, and like seeing no light at the end of the tunnel other than we trade Devin Booker and get a bunch of picks back at some point. Like I think this is going to be one of the most like most cited examples of like how an ownership group comes in and like can just wreck a team with short-sighted moves and like trying to make splashes and not thinking about like well, how do other smart teams operate? Should we do that? No. We're going to do this. And here's where we are. Like, I think the Suns are going to be that example going forward.
I think you're right, because I would even get, and I think you've like pinpointed exactly, because I've seen debates about, would you rather have Yusuf Nurkic or DeAndre Ayton right now? And it's, well, you got Grayson Allen as part of that trade. So, and I know he's injured, and I've seen the whole, like, well, if this wasn't with like the Bradley Beal stuff, the issue was the Kevin Durant trade.
Right.
That is what
on that the whole time. You've been right about that all along. Of just the cost of that.
Would I have done it? Would I have traded for Kevin Durant? The answer is fuck yes. Now, the Suns were negotiating against themselves at one point. Would I have done what they did? I would like to think no. And I'm pretty certain that I would have said no. But like, that is what this is. That's going to be the genesis of everything. You could point to this stuff. Well, they didn't get as much traction out of the minimums as they needed to. And it's like, well, do you know why they needed so much run from the minimums? Because this is the situation they put themselves in. And I think I'm totally on board with you. I tend to see where it's like, well, let's just see, because I really believe that now here's some things that I think I'm just adding to what you said. You're pigeonholed because it's Bradley Beal's trade value is nuked because there's no trade clause. Forget about the money. Forget about, there's a world where Bradley Beal is still an all-star. There's a world where, but he has a no trade clause and he makes a ton of money. And then it's Kevin Durant's requested trades before. Why would this stop him now? And you mentioned the Devin Booker stuff. At what point, if they don't come back in this first round series, if they don't even make it a fight, he has so much time left on his deal. I wouldn't expect it. When does he become the guy who he's just watched that core that was around him? Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, DeAndre Ayton, even Chris Paul, if you want to count him, just gone, just absolutely gone. And he's going to be sitting here realizing how barren they are, knowing that the way he's going to be viewed is at least tied to playing in meaningful games and potentially winning them. At what point does he just ask for out? Forget about Kevin Durant, but like, he is the best player and most important player on their team. I do believe that this is headed towards disaster for sure.
And like, I know I tagged Ishbia here. Just what you said about like, would I have done it for the price? Talking about the Durant trade, probably not. You know who else probably wouldn't have done it based on all the reporting? James Jones. Like, it was like they kept coming back, and Ishbia kept saying like, do it. That's what all the reporting says, is like, this was not the Durant trade was not one that Phoenix's like actual basketball people thought was like worthwhile in terms of the assets they were giving up. And then ownership has the final say, and ownership pushed that trade through. And I think that the fact that his thumbprint his fingerprints are on that deal, I think we agree that was kind of the Beal thing is so bad, but like, that was just swaps and you're just stuck with a bad contract. Like, the price you paid for Durant is the reason you don't have outs anymore. So I think that does just fall at ownership's feet. And so, I mean, I just can't get over. I want to go back now and read about like how toxic or how bad was it at the end of that last run with the previous core, because like they had the ugly playoff bow out, and it's just like, what if they just kind of tweaked instead of going, full restart with a bunch of new guys? I don't know.
Or if they, how about this? What if you held the line in talks with the Nets and said, fine, we'll hold on to Kevin Durant until the offseason then.
Right.
We'll see you then when he still wants to come to Phoenix.
Someone's blinking. I mean, maybe Brooklyn just blinks. We don't want to go through a full year with this guy being unhappy. It's totally possible. We got to get off the Suns though. You got to take us somewhere else.
I'll take us to Indiana, where I think Pascal Siakam is just a major winner here. He has been through 2 games versus the Bucks, the best player on the Pacers. And he's at like the numbers, and I know it's only 2 games, but 36.5 points, 12 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 67.5% shooting on twos. And these are not layups and just like open space drives. He's hit some turnarounds. He's just scored in traffic. He's shooting 50% from deep, only 4 of 8. I think more important though, well, there's 2 things, is the manner that in which he's playing this way, where it's operating as both a co-star and a lifeline, depending almost on the possession. So Tyrese Halliburton, still a tone setter on offense, and then Siakam is just going to continue to carry it. And yet he's also kind of distinguishing when to adjust, if not overhaul it entirely in the half court, wherever necessary. Striking that balance is so hard to do, and it's even harder to maintain when you're so critical to what your team's doing defensively. I recognize Giannis isn't in this series. I question how much time he'd be the primary defender on him anyway. But like they turned to him in game 2 specifically, like, hey, we need someone to kind of like go after Dame for a minute. And he did it. And so I'm looking at this, and this is all happening in advance. There's 2 things that's out here. Let's focus on in advance of free agency. He's 30 years old, and there's something to be said about when the team that knows the most about you in the Raptors, that won at a high level with you, and I know he wasn't this player when they won the championship in 2019, deciding that you weren't worth paying. As sour as things got behind the scene, that seems to be where things went wrong, is they decided we don't want to pay Pascal Siakam max money. Mm-hmm. And now he's playing like this. So he's going to get to free agency. And yes, his age is not going to change. It'd be weird if it did. And he's going to, oh, he's getting younger. Holy shit. He'll be eligible with the Pacers to sign a 4-year, $189.5 million max, or a 5-year, $245.3 million, I think max. It is. I would be shocked at this point if he doesn't get the 4-year full boat. I would be fearless. If it's close, we can quibble over dollars and cents there, the decimals. I'd be pretty shocked, though. I'd be shocked if he left. And that was always kind of the implication of, well, Indiana gave up 3 first-round picks to get him, which isn't nothing. And that's the other thing here, which it makes the Pacers winners by extension, but also Siakam as well. The idea of trading for him has just been validated because like you've needed to, if you were going to get rid of Buddy Hield, you need to experiment with Tyrese Halliburton off the ball. And he's just going to need some offensive alleviation in general, as we've kind of seen time and time again. And so you go out and you get this guy who's giving you exactly what you need. And it gives you, it's not just about this postseason run. I know he's getting older, but it's as you project forward to the version of the Pacers that is not just this darling irritant, but a mainstay contender near the top of the East. Like the blueprint is now laid. You have the 2 guys around which to flesh out the rest of your roster moving forward. And I understand Tyrese Halliburton is the single biggest driving force of that, but now Tyrese Halliburton established that last year. So a year ago, 18 months ago. And now you've already found the second guy, like to have that groundwork laid. That is huge. And the fact that Siakam's doing it, again, I know Giannis isn't playing, but like, this is real shit. Like this is real shit. And the stuff he's doing, I can't. And Samson Folk actually wrote a fantastic piece for Basketball. She wrote, go check that out, about what he did in, I think it was game 2 specifically. But like watching him this series, seeing this type of shots he's hit, even the passes that he sprayed out on the move, this is a massive win for Siakam. Because if there was any doubt, and I'll boil it down to this before I throw it to you, if there was any doubt that this guy's a max player in the NBA, it should be gone by now. And I get you want to quibble about, well, what's the back end of that deal going to look like? I'll go as far as this. I feel comfortable with the first 3 years of wherever deal he's going to sign. And that's at least 60% of the contract. Which
like is all you should really, because anytime someone's even in like their late 20s, the back end of the deal is always kind of iffy. And that's just like it's priced in. That's just what it's going to be. You know, it's rare for a guy his age to sign a deal. And like at the end of, I'm trying to think of who examples would even be, like, I guess Kyle Lowry or like someone like that like in their early to mid 30s, like still is just out there. Like he's going to get a deal that pays him as much or more annually than the one he just finished. Like that's just how it is. And really, like
Drew Holiday, apparently.
Drew Holiday getting $100 million deals till he's 50, it seems like. But for the Pacers specifically, like Halliburton's quite a bit younger than Siakam. So like maybe if you're really hypercritical of Siakam as a second guy, it's like, well, it's too far apart. The timelines don't. It's like, no. You need someone like Siakam, or let's just say you need Siakam for like the next 2-3 years, right? And then you can just rejigger the like lineup around Halliburton as he gets into his mid-late 20s. Like you need Siakam now. Like this is the right piece for right now. And like nothing's promised beyond 2 or 3 years for any team anyway. So like who cares? So I don't think he's getting the 5-year just because Indiana doesn't have to do it, but they do just have to go max out the 4-year because it's like like $9 million more total than another team can give him on a 4-year deal. So you can't mess around there. You just have to immediately go full 4-year max. And just like for him taking a deal from somebody else is just like leaving money on the table, which even if he's not super happy about not getting the 5 years, like he's getting the most he can possibly get. So
maybe there's like somewhere, is he signing well below the max, but it's over 5 years. So it's more guaranteed money, but the annual value is lower. By the way, very quickly, the other thing that this is doing is kind of proving that when you go out and kind of find, because they still need like a wing that's not Aaron Nesmith, maybe someone who could play with Nesmith. Like Siakam just kind of reinforced like, oh, that wing needs minimal creation talent.
Yeah, right. You're right. All right, I'm going to pick a winner here too. My winner is Luka Doncic, mainly because now I know mainly because of his game 2 defensive performance. Like that's a game that Dallas wins by 3 to get was more than that because Paul George hit a late 3 that made it look even closer than it was, but gets a split in LA, which like I picked the Mavs to win this series. I was feeling real nervous after game 1. I think everybody was really down on how Dallas played in that game. Doncic played awesome defense. Tim McMahon tweeted out a stat just about like everybody went over other than James Harden made 1 shot against Luka Doncic in individual defense. Held his matchups to 2 of 17. Now, people that watch the Mavs and know what Luka's limitations are and are not will say like he's actually always been like pretty good, or not always, but has been pretty good in isolation. Like he can move his feet enough. He's really strong. Like he's not an easy guy to score on per se. So the fact that he's holding his Clipper matchups to like ridiculously low shooting percentages because they're attacking him is like, well, he could always do that. I got to push back. Like every team's approach is to go at Luka as much as possible. Let's wear him out. Let's at least just make him move and work because Dallas loves to just stash him on guys that don't move. And like if you look at B-Ball Index, they have like these player cards you can put together and every category you can imagine, it'll give you a percentile and letter grade. Luka's like miles run on defense is like in the first percentile. Like he just doesn't move. So to hold up physically and really perform defensively answers a lot of questions, albeit in just one game. But like for how long was the story on him? He wears down within games. He wears down within weeks, within months, within seasons, within series. Like he physically doesn't hold up. To bring it in game 2 and get that split, not saying he's going to be able to do it on both ends every game, but like if he can summon that level of defensive competitiveness, like a couple times in a series, that might be all it takes. Like, and to get that game in LA, I think is indicative of that. Cause now you go back to Dallas, maybe you get a couple there and you're just in the driver's seat. Even if Luka doesn't hold this level, just to do it when he needed to, and in a way that was like really conspicuous, like you couldn't watch that game and say, and like not notice how much he was competing. I think it's weird. Like the full like referendum on Luka Doncic, like defensive ability is like, it's not done yet, but this is a question answered. I feel like at least in a small way. So that was a big positive for me.
It feels like also, so he's doing all of this while also having just played faster this year and played differently. And so he just continues to answer these questions and it's creating further separation from Trae Young, who he's already better than. We still have the questions about Trae Young, where how can he fit better into the larger context of a team? And Luka Doncic is proving that he can, while also still being kind of the central point of everything. And I think I saw some of the halftime show of that game was saying that there was too much Luka and like he needs to play off the ball more. And it's like, it's not necessarily, first of all, he did this year, but it's not necessarily that. It's the fact that he plays at different cadences. And then you mentioned the defensive stuff. Yeah, he's a huge like winner in all of this. And like the Mavs kind of come off looking like winners in general too. We didn't see how the series ends, but will, with the work that PJ Washington has done for them, and then like the Gafford keeps getting injured every single game. I don't know what's up with that, but were they smart to? We've had this debate over and over again. It seems like they were smart to make those midseason trades, but would we have still made them looking ahead? The way Luka is playing, though, like it's both. It gives you confidence, and then it also rattles you because it's, well, this dude's like so good. Like this stuff needs to happen now, and now you can't. If they did lose this series, or if they eventually bow out in the playoffs, I feel like it's overwhelmingly clear that it's not going to be like, man, his play style just degrades and it's only going to get you. So he's not even going to be, I'm never saying he would have been, but like, it's just very clear that he is not going to be a part of any issue. Maybe game to game, the defense will fluctuate. He might complain a little bit more, but I'm absolutely with you on that.
Yeah.
So let's do a loser. Who do I got here? Oh man, we have to, let's do a quick loser. I have Buddy Hield averaging before game 3, a whopping fewer than 13 minutes per game. And he was traded from the Pacers because he wanted a bigger role long-term and the big ass bag that comes with it. Then the Sixers acquired him because I get it. The cost was low enough. He fits into their cap space plan, but also presumably so that he could open up the floor for Tyrese Maxey and a healthy Joel Embiid, and then maybe establish himself as someone worth keeping around long term. Fast forward to the playoffs, and his minutes fluctuated with the Sixers, but like this is a different level of, it's borderline erasure. He's logging fewer than 13 minutes per game, as I said, and he's not giving Nick Nurse a reason to play him more. He's 2 of 6 from 3 in the series, so he's not taking shots at a high volume. And now there's always a defensive trade-off to playing Beal that the Sixers specifically are no longer built to cover up when you, one, have Joel Embiid playing on one leg, and two, no DeAnthony Melton. And so you're sitting here, and someone is going to pay Buddy Hield anyway. He's a career 40% shooter from deep on over 7.5 attempts per game. That volume and efficiency, it sells. But he's 31, and he's going to be looking for what will probably be his last long-term deal. And long-term deals are getting harder to secure as non-stars, it feels like. And to now be at a point where you're watching the Sixers and you're saying, well, Kelly Oubre and 38-year-old Kyle Lowry and even the shell of Tobias Harris are more valuable at both ends than Buddy Hield right now. Just it's a mini subplot to this. Maybe the Sixers just aren't invested in him working through it because they know he's not going to stick around. But like,
interesting
to go from how important he was with the Pacers. Remember we were talking about part of the reason that Tobias Harris, that Tyrese Halliburton was struggling was they missed Buddy Hield. And like to just be sitting on the Sixers bench in this playoff series with the Knicks for most of the game.
Yeah, it's funny. Like it's almost one of those situations where it seemed it was too easy. It was too easy to say like, oh my God, Buddy Hield with Joel Embiid getting doubled all the time, just running around loose. Like imagine it's going to be perfect. Like what could go wrong? It's going to be the ideal fit. It's like, I guess it's just not that simple sometimes. And the other weird thing is it's not like the Sixers and Embiid and Maxey and I guess Harris and some of the other guys are like unfamiliar with a Buddy Hield type because JJ Redick was there for several years. And it's like, I mean, Redick had much more of a like inside the arc game, I guess, like with the handoff stuff with Embiid, but like they should feel pretty comfortable with a guy with just an ace shooter flying around off pin downs and stuff. Like it's not like a new concept. And Nick Nurse has fashioned all kinds of different offenses and has tinkered very successfully over his career. So it's like, I just don't understand why he's not having as big of a role. But I think that's interesting what you just said of like, maybe because they've already decided like he's not going to be a big part of the future. They're just like, what's the point of using him? And maybe, I don't know, maybe he is like a unique enough player that it's hard to like figure out where he likes to get the ball and how to cover for him defensively. And all
how much is it? Well, clearly he just didn't practice with Embiid ever because of the Embiid injury. And then you're all of a sudden in the postseason crucible. So I don't know how much of that is a factor, but either way, that's not, I think someone's going to pay him. He's an incredibly talented shooter, but that's not ideal to go from thinking like, the grass isn't always greener type cliche right now, because you had like a certain, maybe people didn't fully appreciate how important you were to the Pacers, and the Pacers are doing things right now without him, but it took them so long to kind of find themselves without him that I would say it's a less than ideal development for him as he's preparing to enter free agency.
It's costing him money for sure. I have a small, I don't have any like big picture ones anymore, but I have a small one that I just feel like we have to talk about. A small winner here. The Miami Heat won a game against the Celtics. And I know it happened because they shot 4 trillion threes and made 2 trillion threes and just played some weird zone that Boston seemed ill-equipped to handle at times, though that should have been seen coming. No team that I still view as a massive prohibitive underdog makes me think just a little bit about like, oh, are they going to do this? Then the Heat, right? It's like we joke all the time about, oh, we can't rule them out. They can't be killed, all this other stuff. It's like, even though I had no confidence whatsoever and still have no confidence that Miami can win the series or even like make it competitive, just the fact that they won a game gives me just enough doubt. And I can't think of a better testament to Eric Spoelstra and the whole hashtag Heat culture thing than that feeling. Than a feeling where it's just like, oh no, are they going to do this? They're not. But no other team winning a single game can make you question yourself like the Heat can. That's why they're small time winners.
I'm going to take it a step further because I had them as a winner too. They're big time winners here. They have people talking about, well, it's clear that the Blazers should have accepted their package for Dame. Look at what Nikola Jovic is doing on defense and as a passer. Look at the game that Tyler Hero just had. I want to ask you about Eric Spoelstra specifically, though, because the guy is like a mad scientist when it comes to this stuff, knowing how to use Nikola Jovic, just knowing like kind of the right levers to pull there. And Grace from the What's in a Game podcast had pointed this out on Twitter that, you mentioned the Heat and the way they were defending, but like Boston has not been like one of the better, just like from that specific where most of their jumpers came and missed from inside the arc. They've been like among the top 10 offenses in the league, one of the worst from those areas anyway. And so it's just like these like genius shit from Eric Spoelstra. Do you sort of get vibes of just kind of like, remember how Tim Duncan is universally considered like maybe one of the 3 to 5 best defenders of all time, who never won Defensive Player of the Year. And Eric Spoelstra is just universally considered the best coach in the NBA, but he's never won Coach of the Year. That's just like, it feels like something weird like that is sort of at play here. But the Heat become winners because Eric Spoelstra exists, but also because did most people even like, people are worried about the Celtics after game 2. Even if you thought the Heat would steal a game, you probably thought it would come in Miami. Would they get lucky and Jimmy Butler would play? To have that type of game so early in the series, and to like what Bam was doing from mid-range. And then also, I think the bigger thing, maybe the biggest thing, was just, yeah, okay, Boston will play better on offense, but they've had bogged down issues before, and the Heat were absolutely playing a role in the types of shots they were coaxing or forcing the Celtics into. They did that in game 2. Like, so it's like now you have Celtics on tilt for, even if you lose this series 4-1, it was 1-1 at some point. Like, you went back to Miami having stolen home. They're massive winners to me. It's the alien shit at play all over again.
It is. I feel like it's more panic inducing because of the nature of game 2's win, because it came with like a 3-point barrage that like the Heat just, their offense sucked all year. They don't have Jimmy Butler to create shots, and they didn't take or make a lot of threes in general. Like, it's almost like it's panic inducing because it's like, well, this is just chaos now because none of our assumptions about this series were correct. If they're going to win a game that way, like then it's like, well, what possible use was there in trying to forecast this series? Because obviously we don't have any idea about what they're willing to do or what they can do to be successful. It's like I don't know. It's like, I don't know anything about MMA, but it's like if you went into a fight knowing a guy was a really good boxer and you prepped the whole time to fight a boxer, and then he just like took you to the ground in the first like 5 seconds. And you're like, what is this? I'm not prepared for this. This is uncomfortable. I don't have a game plan. Like, the Heat can't make 23 out of 43 from deep in every game, but doing it once just throws everything off its axis. And now it's like, well, what are they going to do in game 3? Like, play 4 corners offense for the whole game and like fall? Are they going to do the Vivek Ranadive thing and like leave someone down the other end of the floor and cherry pick? Like, anything is on the table if the Heat can beat the Celtics by shooting and making more threes. Like, that's just, it upends everything. And that's that is why I think it's so disruptive.
Well, it's also disruptive is that they have the personnel to Phoenix probably wishes that they could make the active decision just to take, we want to shoot more threes and our players will actually do it.
Right.
And like
right.
So the Heat having that personnel for them to actually do it, but then that person, did you see like Duncan Robinson was defending his ass off in that game. And so it's just, and first of all, the other thing too, you know who's a winner? And he's always a winner. Caleb Martin's free agency list just continues to, oh boy.
Watching game 1, watching Caleb Martin shoot on the way down, like every time, it's like that guy with the like spasmodic like leg kick on his threes. It's like, I was thinking like that guy's never going to make another shot in his life. It's not possible. And then in game 2, it's just like, that guy's never going to miss another shot. Like, good Caleb Martin completely changes everything about the Heat because he's like, the defensive intensity and the willingness to push the ball and like just all the way he's like, I don't know. It's like when he's sliding in to like in a help rotation, it's like he's on hot coals. His feet are like moving so quickly. The good version of him changes everything. But like, I can't believe he looked so bad to me in the first game. And then the second game, he's a different person. I don't know what the Heat are doing. I don't know how they get these performances out of these guys.
Yeah. If they go up 2-1, could you imagine just
emergency pod if they go up?
I'm going to hold you to that.
Okay. All All right.
If they go up 2-1, I'm gonna hold you to. When do they play? Is it Saturday next?
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
So I keep feeling like I'm negative Nancy here, but so I'll go to a loser. This one, well, how about a combination winner and loser?
Okay.
So the Thunder are winners because this idea that like Jonas Valanciunas can punish them on the offensive glass, and like New Orleans, I feel like might have been a compelling matchup if Zion were healthy. Hot take, but just like they're just handling it. They've turned Jonas Valanciunas into even more of a defensive liability, and I like this team when you look at Jay. I mean, Shea is Shea, but Shea, I don't know what else to say. Shea is Shea. Yeah. Chet calling him, that team is just so connected too. Like that's another one where if you had to give out like the synergy award, well, actually, I don't know. The Nuggets might have it in the West. The Knicks definitely have it in the East. But anyway, they're just, I think they've reinforced that like, okay, like maybe experience might matter once you get to the finals or something. But like this is a team that's a threat to beat anyone in the West, including the Nuggets. I wouldn't pick them to do it, but they're just a winner for kind of reiterating that. Well, yeah, fuck, we are amazing. Like Case and Wallace can just come in, defend his butt off whenever we want.
Yeah,
we're gonna push that button when we need to. I will say, and it's a stretch if you're basing this off of just one game, which I am not. Josh Giddey's a loser, and I know he played better in game 2, but that game was it was superficially not a blowout at one point, and then just turned it like it devolved into one. Mm-hmm. So my point is there were 0 high stakes minute played in game 2. In game 1, 7 players for the Thunder logged crunch time minutes. Josh Giddey was not one of them. Mm-hmm. He was out basically the entire fourth quarter. The Pelicans are guarding him exactly as you would expect them to guard him when he doesn't have the ball, which is to say they're not guarding him at all. And he's 2 of 6 from 3, so he hasn't made them pay. And I get there are moments, there are stretches when his live dribble passing, the threat of the floater, the decision-making there can put defenses on tilt. He has value. They are just that, though. They're stretches. They're temporary. They're ephemeral. It's obvious, like maybe under a different team where you give him more control over the ball, he's going to have more intrinsic value to you. There's no reason to do that on this team because you have Shea, you have J-Dub, and I'm looking at this, and he's extension eligible this summer, and his place, and this dates back to the regular season. Mark Daigneault fucked around. Well, not fucked. He futzed around. He futzed around with the closing lineups, and I think now you can legitimately make the case that you're closing a game. For matchups, be damned, Grant. You are closing a game. We know Case and Wallace is ahead of you in the pecking order now of options, probably. You know who else is probably ahead of you? Isaiah Joe?
Yeah.
Aaron Wiggins? That's an issue.
Kenrich Williams out there. I mean, put big Jalen Williams out there. They're like, you can get a lot of.
Put Lindy Waters the third out.
Yeah, get him in there.
So I just feel like he is a very talented basketball player who will probably still get paid. And we've always kind of said that his future with this team is in doubt. But game 1 drove home, I feel like, what the underlying message has been all along. And that is he has never been on shakier footing when you're looking at his long-term value utility to the Thunder. And the playoffs were a chance to kind of flip that script. And I will say this is what makes the Thunder a winner. They have a lot of playoff basketball left to play because they're really good and they're going to make a deep run. But yeah, I have Josh Giddey as you can call him a tentative loser if you want, but that's what he is then, a tentative loser. Kind of just like he can tentatively sometimes hit wide open threes.
Right. It doesn't want to shoot him. I just keep watching the Thunder continue to play him, even though it's diminishing, and think like, how good is this team going to be when they replace that spot in the starting lineup? Like, even if it's like, I don't even mean if it's just Wallace that eventually takes that spot over. He's the logical guy, but like, what if all we talk about is like, this trove of draft picks they've got to trade. Like they have the assets to go get anybody. Like what happens when they turn that spot into like a 6'9" wing that can do everything? Like what, how good is this team going to be? Like if it's a Paul George type or whatever, like that the Thunder are just, they could lose this series. And I would still just think of them as like, this future is so bright. It's so bright. Like all this is just gravy right now, which is crazy because they like, why won't they make the conference finals?
To be clear, I don't think that this issue with Josh Giddey, and you weren't saying this, the issue with Josh Giddey isn't really an issue for the Thunder.
No.
Specifically, Josh Giddey is the loser here because the Thunder have proven that they don't need him and might be at this point the more menacing team without him. If we're being brutally, like, honestly, you're right. I'm not going to hedge anymore. The Thunder are going to be a better team without Josh Giddey. Whether that's right now, fine, make it arguable. Well, fast forward 2 or 3 years, like the best version of this team is not going to include Josh Giddey.
No, and I think you're seeing it now where like I feel like in a lot of the pre-series analysis, how does New Orleans win this series? Like what are the ways, right? And by the way, should have won game 1. Got to feel like they let game 1 get away. That's like devastating to not get that one. What you would say is, well, you're going to have to involve Giddey defensively. You're going to have to go at him. You're going to have to you're going to have to sag off him and make him shoot threes and make the Thunder, go away from their normal plan. Not that they would, but like that's the blueprint you would draw up against the Thunder if you're in New Orleans. Like exploit the weak link. Giddey's the weak link on both ends. And if part of the conversation is like, maybe they shouldn't do that so that Giddey stays on the floor, like that's really telling. Like you don't say that about a lot of players. It only comes up in playoff series where it's like you got to go at the guy like just enough to get an advantage, but don't spam it so that they just take him out of the game and put in Case and Wallace, who's just better. Like you have to like find that right balance, and like that's pretty telling that was like an often discussed aspect of this series.
Can we do the other side of this series where I think I'm going to step on a lot of probably what I've iterated in the past, but the Pelicans are losers and no one expected them to win this series. I totally get that. But we're now going into their second actual playoff push of the Zion Williamson era, and he will have appeared in exactly 0 of those games. And now you're at the point where you're in, I don't want to call it a no-win situation. You're in an impossible situation, though. Waiting is just no longer like an option because this team has had multiple chances and it's just never been healthy enough, available enough to see them all together when it matters most. So now you go into the offseason, and I saw this on Twitter that a lot of people, and I don't disagree with the actual sentiment, but it's when your first reaction is, here's hoping the Pelicans can diversify and improve the center rotation. No, it's not like, yes. No, so yes, I agree with you. You know what they need first? A driver of their offense, because you can't rely on Zion Williamson's body, which, by the way, that's what makes this so, it's both gutting and jarring because Zion was playing the best defense of his career this season. He was in the best shape of his career. He was transcended. He was having one of the best, or if not the single best performance of his career when he got hurt, but his body just keeps betraying him. So I'm not blaming him. I saw some people, I don't know if you saw the clip of him yelling. I don't think he was like being rude. It was like, he was like kind of coaching up his teammates on the sidelines. And I guess somebody should, but like, and they were just like, well, maybe I saw the comment saying, well, maybe he should be healthy enough to, this is not a Zion Williamson issue anymore. This dude's body is an anomaly. And it seems like he's done everything he could. And as the Pelicans, you have to have the self-awareness to say, it's not, like, maybe it comes together for a few seasons, but we can no longer bank on it, or we can no longer build our team in the image of this is the only answer. We need a viable contingency. And that leads into the Brandon Ingram discussion to where he's got to go. You have to upgrade from that spot, or if you're going to keep him and try to figure that out when you get an actual floor general in here, fine. But like the biggest issue for the Pelicans now is a creator who can drive the offense on their own. And yes, preferably work with Zion Williamson, but like it's over. Like you can't sit still. You're talking about Brandon Ingram's next contract's coming up. Trey Murphy's next contract is coming up. You got lucky on the Herb Jones deal. If you want to keep Jonas Valanciunas, or if you want to pay somebody, or if you want to like you have tax concerns already. And this is not a team. I know their fans like, well, they said that they'll pay the tax. I'll believe it when I see it. That's fine. But you need to make this call, which maybe you always needed to make it, but it would be a lot easier, more palatable to make the call to go the nuclear route, or decide we have to, you're one time deviating from Brandon Ingram and also the Zion at point model, or Zion as lifeline model, which is very uncomfortable when you've never seen those two in action together in the playoffs, but you have to do it now. It's just, you can't. And this was, you leave open the idea because they almost won game 1 and they won it And like, if they won this series, then it's, there's time for him to come back. Who knows if he actually would have. That's not happening now. You're going to lose this series. Another season's going to be over. You've yet to finish in the top 6 during the Zion Williamson era. And now you have to move on from so many different aspects of it. And it sucks because like you never got to see it all in full. But I'll phrase it like this. The clarity for the Pelicans is in the absence of it with their current nucleus. And that's just the point that they're at.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to, I can't get behind what you're saying about Brandon Ingram not quite being up for it because I've only ever said good things. But do you know, it's like a bit now where like everything I say about Brandon Ingram is at best like a backhanded compliment.
Yes. I posted a meme about it in Discord.
Yeah, no, I didn't ever think this would be like one of my things. Because I think like, I don't know. Brandon Ingram is a 85th percentile NBA player.
Like, God, I thought you were going to say like a top 85.
No, like it's a top whatever, top 40, maybe something like that.
It's like with him, and I don't know how much of this is necessarily him, but like there's a different. If you look at other stars, you phrased it on the last podcast when you said that what he does is hit these tough shots.
He makes bad shots. He's really good at making bad shots.
He only gets them in one way where it's like there's not necessarily different levels to his scoring. He's not taking more 3-point attempts, or he never is taking enough for a long enough stretch. And then like you're not, and this might be a Willie Green thing, a Pelicans thing, but like you can't run things with him away from the ball to free him up or try different things with him as the decoy. And it's just, that can't be your second best player when Zion is your first best player. That's just the reality of this situation.
And you just have more sensible alternative. Like I think Trey Murphy and Herb Jones, I know Shamit Dua has said this in the past. I don't know if he still thinks so, but like, those are your guys. Like, I mean, obviously Zion is your guy, but you've made, I believe, the correct points about like, you cannot build a firm foundation with Zion. Like it's just always going to be a flimsy operation if he is like the thing that's holding everything up. With like Murphy and Jones are like, give those guys 40 minutes every night in any playoff series. Like those guys are out there like locks, like no problem. And both have upside. Both have improved. Both will continue to improve. I don't know if either of them is going to be an all-star, but Herb is obviously like one of the best defensive players in the world. And Murphy just is the perfect role player as long as you don't need him to dribble. Maybe he learns to dribble. Like that's like he's not like he's 30.
Maybe you don't like kind of plant him still so often when he's one of the most dangerous motion shooters in the NBA.
So, just like on the Ingram thing, whatever else you can get for Ingram, great. Because you have those two guys that are going to play the same position. Like that, you're set there. They make more sense with Zion anyway. So just like the Ingram,
you're ready to call. You're ready to call in the Trae Young trade. Like you're ready to sound.
These are my two things butting up against each other. I want to trade Brandon Ingram, and I don't want Trae Young on my team. I don't know how to answer.
Who's a better fit for this team, Brandon Ingram or Trae Young?
Oh, Trae Young. That's easy, but I still don't like it.
Do you have any? You have another winner or loser?
I think I've exhausted my supply of winners and losers.
Well, I have a quick winner.
Okay,
Malik Monk, because the Orlando Magic are exactly who we thought they were.
Yep.
And they need caps lock shooters, plural, and hopefully creators. I don't view Monk as a shooter, excuse me, like a caps lock shooter. Mm-hmm. But relative to what the Magic have, because like even Karl-Anthony has not been like they're not playing him a ton in this series against the Cavs.
Yeah.
Like they're a team, they can have cap space. Like they're just gonna go out and pay Malik Monk because he makes a lot of sense there. This is more of a commentary on the Magic to where it's sort of like they're not losers or winners because this is the course first time in the playoffs, but they've reached the playoffs and everything that's wrong with them is exactly what you would expect to be wrong. Maybe they need to drop the starting Jonathan Isaac bit too, is something that they should probably look into. But Malik Monk comes out as a winner because he's all of a sudden like the player everyone's identified. It's like, the Magic just need to pay that dude. I kind of disagree. I think they need to go trade for Anthony Simons, but he's going to end up being a winner.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I mean, maybe you make the Kings a loser because they just like 4 years, 78 is not going to be enough. And that's the most they can pay Monk. And like, you're right about, he's not to use your term, a caps lock shooter, but teams are going to guard him. Like he's not going to get thank God. It's like Cole-Anthony is taking an open three, successful defensive possession. We're good with that. Like Monk is going to be, plus Monk's going to be on the ball a ton wherever he lands, I assume. Like I'll be fascinated to see if a team kind of fancies him as like, I don't know, you wouldn't start him at point guard, but like what he showed with the Kings this year suggests like you could spend a lot of time with Malik Monk as your main creator and look pretty good offensively. So
yeah, I think especially if like Paolo Banchero's on they could start him in theory. It depends on the trick because you're going to start Paolo and Franz, and I would say let's say Wendell Carter Jr. And then if you're going to start Suggs
and Monk, you're good.
Yeah, that's like I'm saying, you could start Monk in that scenario that makes just a ton of sense. I don't love for the money he would cost. I would just prefer Monk is the better passer, especially going downhill. But like Anthony Simons is just the level of shot maker and they're in a situation where they might not have, they get both. They just trade for Anthony Simons, have Malik Monk on their team. That's fine too.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, like based on how they've scored in this playoff series and how they scored all year, you probably do need more than just one of those guys if you're going to really amp up the scoring.
The other quick winner might be, is Darius Garland and the Cavs a quick winner here? They're taking care of business against the Magic. Darius Garland looks okay, or are you still?
I mean,
about what
we definitely had some questions about the Cavs. I wonder if just like I'm going to need to see Cleveland perform against another team just because Orlando's weaknesses are so pronounced that like in the playoffs you don't really know what you're learning I don't think we're learning anything we didn't know, like you said, about Orlando. And I'm not sure we've learned anything yet for certain about the Cavs, just because when a team can't score, there's just like so many easy ways to guard them. I don't know if the Cavs are not really having to strain themselves like tactically or personnel wise yet.
Okay. I have one more too. And I was going to shelf this take for a minute. Are you getting like, I don't know, like dynastic Spursian vibes from the Denver Nuggets at all when you watch them? So here's my thing. I'm like, I don't even want to unbottle this because I feel like I'm going to end this might be too Jokic centric, and I don't mean to insult Jamal Murray, who's one of just, I guess, the most proven playoff performers in the game at this point. But look at where the Nuggets kind of are. And like, you kind of look at teams that have reached this level where we think that they have a chance of repeating. Has there ever been like a larger gap between the best player and then sort of the second best player? And I'm using like, maybe the Spurs were a bad example because even they were all more of a collective at that point where Tim Duncan wasn't, the post 2010 Spurs, like Tim Duncan wasn't the fifth best player in the NBA or whatever it is. But you look at the Nuggets and how they play collectively, and it gives me sort of just like the Spursian vibes. But they also have this megastar that maybe the Spurs didn't have. And so I'm just looking at them and I'm like, if they keep this together, what is it that derails them? Because Murray will he's not going to get any worse. And like I said, I'm not trying to denigrate his value, but look what he just did to Anthony Davis, who's the worst defender in the league because he couldn't stop that Murray shot. So I don't know. I don't mean to say the Nuggets are going to be a dynasty, but it's not just about going back to back. It's just, I watch them. You see the chemistry, the synergy, the connectivity, the way that they can flip a switch, try these different things. And now you have like, the Christian Brown and Peyton Watson element being in the pipeline is like going to be really beneficial. Dude, you just get like are we watching something not like sustainably transcendent here that we're not ready yet to admit because it's only one championship old?
I think I wrote after they won it last year, my take was like, this is not going away. For all the reasons you said, like the superstar they have is like, I don't know. It's easy to say this now, and maybe this will be proved wrong, but he's like, who seems more aging proof than Jokic? Like the counter is like, well, if you don't have a step to lose and you do lose that step, it means a ton because, he's just not athletically dominant, but like, he's always going to be big. He's always going to have the same vision. He's always going to have like his command over like the proceedings on the court is only going to improve as he just gets more reps, right? Like we think like maybe this is the peak of like mental basketball processing. It's like, well, what's he going to look like 3 years from now when he's just had more? I mean, so, and like the way that the league, the collective bargaining agreement works, like the Nuggets can just keep all these guys. It's not a situation where if you need to overpay to keep KCP or Aaron Gordon or whatever, like you're going to have bird rights on all these guys. You can, if they're willing to go over the cap, like there's no reason this team should change fundamentally, at least among its top guys. So like, yeah. And the thing is like the Spurs with Duncan were like 3 or 4 different teams over the length of that run. And Duncan was the constant, but like and so looking at that as an example, why can't Jokic be the constant? And what style of play would not work with Jokic at the center of it? You know, like anything is going to work if he's there. He'll find a way. So you can build, if for whatever reason some of these core support pieces change, like, I don't know, none of them have been all-stars. So it's by definition, it's not going to be that hard to replace some of them. And if you play differently, then I trust Jokic to figure it out. So as long as injury doesn't come in or like cheapness from ownership, like why wouldn't the Denver thing just go on for a long time, right?
Yeah, and it was weird because the Spurs weren't a perfect analog. Maybe because I was focusing too much on the back end of that sort of run. But like it's almost feel like they're a blend of like the dynastic Warriors and then like the Spurs at once, because you have the megastar at this point. And I know Tim Duncan might have been that at one point, but I'm just like, if they win back-to-back titles, the comparison feels like it'll hold up even more. And like I wanted to wait until at least but I'm just like watching this team and I'm like, who's stopping this over the next half decade? And we know how team building works. Ownership isn't going to want to pay as some of these guys come up on their new deals. But you mentioned with Jokic still in his prime, able to optimize everybody. And they have that Spursian thing to where, you know, the Warriors tried the 2 timeline thing. It ended up sabotaging not sabotaging, but it wasn't able to, they didn't sabotage the initial timeline, but they didn't prop it up either because they were focused on the second timeline to where they could have done things to augment the first one. And like the Nuggets aren't in that position yet because the age of everyone in there. So you can juggle the 2 timelines without, and I mean, this is boiling down to 2 players, unless you think like Julian Strother or Jalen Pickett is going to like be a huge part of the team too. I'm reticent to say anything is sustainable in this league right now, but I'm just looking at the Nuggets and trying to find the reason that this thing would bust up, break up, devolve, regress in the next like 3 to 5 years, which is a lifetime in NBA years. And I can't find it.
I mean, there's a reason we watched the Celtics win 64 games and have, you know, relative to the rest of the league, one of the best net ratings we've ever seen, and still said, well, yeah, but the Nuggets. It's like there's just something, you know, not every team that wins a title makes you feel this way. Like some of those Warriors teams were like, well, this is the real deal, you know? And like the Nuggets win last year, people can talk about who they did and didn't beat, but like, it just feels like a different type of championship. It's not a one-off situation to me.
They don't have that. To me, they have not that same feeling of inevitability as the Warriors, but there does seem to be an inevitability to them that those Spurs teams never felt like they had.
Yeah.
And so like, that's why I was struggled to making that, but it's just, I think as like, in terms of the collective and then like juggling multiple different agendas when it comes to your timeline at once, I'm just, maybe I'm not just, what did I say last time? I'm not, you weren't sipping the Kool-Aid. You were dry scooping. You were mixing, you weren't even mixing it. Maybe I'm dry scooping the Nuggets Kool-Aid, and I've dry scooped pre-workout before. It is not, I don't know why people do it. It's not pleasant. I don't understand it at all.
I'm dry scooping too, and it's delicious. Like there's just I just can't get past, you don't even have to think that much beyond like, that starting 5 is perfect. Like everything about it is perfect. All the pieces fit. Everybody knows what to do. Everybody's good at the things they're asked to do. And it's just like no other team is that way. Even the Celtics aren't quite that way. They don't
feel that way because we have evidence that they're not like that.
Oh, Bert, unhappy with the Nuggets take. Sorry, buddy.
Yeah, wow. Is he a Celtics fan?
I don't know. I think he had a bad dog dream.
Was that Bert's first appearance on the live podcast?
Yep, he's right here. He was sleeping under the desk and he made his presence felt.
Shout out to Bert, who has just one of the best barks in the world.
He's very rattled right now.
Yeah, I didn't realize he was a Celtics fan.
I guess, yeah. We'll have to change that.
Stat padding time. Grant, we have like a ton of guest players, obviously, but I also have questions for you that I would like to see if you could answer correctly. Are you ready?
I'm unfamiliar with this process, but I will do my best.
Grant, which NBA player has the higher career scoring high in the NBA playoffs? Wilt Chamberlain or Michael Jordan?
Michael Jordan.
Correct. 63 to 56. Jimmy Butler or Donovan Mitchell?
Ooh, I think they both have 50s. I'll say Donovan Mitchell.
That is correct. 57 to 56. Charles Barkley or Allen Iverson? Two Philly legends.
Barkley.
Correct. 56 to 55. LeBron James or Nikola Jokic?
Give me Jokic.
That is correct. 53 to 51. That was a nice by you. I didn't think you were going to get that one. Damian Lillard or Jason Tatum?
I don't know if Dame's got 50. I know Tatum does. I'll go Tatum.
That would be wrong. 55 for Damian Lillard, 51 for Tatum.
He doesn't.
Kobe Bryant or Dirk Nowitzki?
Kobe.
Correct. 50 to 48. Kevin Durant or Russell Westbrook?
I'll go KD.
That is incorrect. Russell Westbrook had 51. KD's is 50. Devin Booker or Steph Curry?
Curry.
Correct. 50 to 47. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or Hakeem Olajuwon?
I'll go Hakeem.
Correct. 49 to 46. Luka Doncic or John Morant?
Luka.
Incorrect. John Morant 47, Luka 46.
That hurts.
Vince Carter or Tracy McGrady?
McGrady.
Incorrect. Vince had 50, McGrady at 46. Steve Nash or Shaquille O'Neal?
This feels like bait. I'm going to say Steve Nash, but I'm not sure I believe it.
You are correct. 48 to 46.
Amazing.
James Harden or Trae Young?
Harden.
Incorrect. Trae Young had 48. James Harden's career high is 45. Ray Allen or Paul Pierce?
Oh, I'll go Pierce.
That is incorrect. Ray Allen had a 51 spot. Paul Pierce topped out at 46.
Oh.
Giannis Antetokounmpo or Derrick Rose?
Giannis.
Correct. 50 to 44. Carmelo Anthony or John Rondo?
What? Carmelo?
Incorrect. Rondo had 44. Melo's career high is 42. Did it a couple times.
I want that game film studied in a lab somewhere.
Magic Johnson or Kyrie Irving?
Kyrie.
Incorrect. Magic had 43. Irving's is 42. Larry Bird or Anthony Davis?
I'll say Davis.
Correct. 47 to 43. Jamal Murray or Isaiah Thomas? Modern era Isaiah Thomas. The 5'3" Isaiah Thomas.
What was that like triple overtime? I'll say Thomas.
That is correct. 53 to 50. Kawhi Leonard or Dwayne Wade?
Kawhi.
Incorrect. Dwayne Wade, 46 to 45.
Ouch.
I think you got more than 50% of those.
Pretty close. I started hot and I really tailed off there.
The back end seemed like it was tough for you. I am impressed you got the LeBron Nikola Jokic one, though. Nice job.
I feel like that was from a previous question where I said Jokic didn't have 50 or something, and you told me he did. So I'm learning. I think we'll see.
Do you have a guess a player for me or anything?
I do. I have or anything else. Just like you want to talk about your day.
Yeah, how's it going?
All right. I have one here from Mike. 11 clues, but this is a short set of clues for Mike. So you either will get this easily or you're in big trouble. Clue number one. I was in the lottery in 2005 after 4 years at the University of Arizona.
Wait, can you read that back?
I was in the lottery in 2005 after 4 years at the University of Arizona.
In the lottery.
I will never not love them giving you college-based clues.
Yeah, who went to Arizona? Channing Frye go to Arizona?
Damn.
Did
you one shot at it.
That one shot killed?
You did say Channing Frye, right?
Yeah.
That's correct.
Friend of the podcast, Channing Frye.
Unbelievable. He's a friend.
I don't know why
he's
a friend. I think he follows us on Twitter.
Oh, okay. Well, he knows we're the number one podcast. Sorry, Mike.
Oh, man.
Dan studied up on his college. Hold on. Everybody went to Arizona. How is Channing Frye your first guess?
Well, you gave me the year, right?
Well,
2004, you said?
yeah, but I mean, I don't know. It could have been. I guess it's too late for Richard Jefferson. I guess, and Bibby and my. Okay, all right,
Yeah,
hey,
you just named a whole bunch of guys who I had no idea went to Arizona. By the way,
that's what I mean. Like, how did you? How did you do? Okay, I guess I'll read some clues now, just because we owe it to Mike. Clue number 2 was I played 60. I wish we could like see if you would have gotten it without clue number 1 somehow, but we'll never know. Clue 2, I played 65 games as a rookie before messing up my knee in a game against the Raptors. Despite that, I was named first team all rookie in 2007, traded alongside Steve Francis for Zach Randolph, Fred Jones, and Dan Dickau. Started 21 games with the Blazers over 2 seasons, not doing much of note. After which I signed a 2-year, $3.8 million deal with the Suns. A year later, extended for 5 and 30. 2012, I was diagnosed with an enlarged heart. You might have got it there.
I probably would have got that one.
Clue 7, on July 14th, 2014, signed with the Magic for 4 years, 32. Disappointing season with the Magic on the court, averaged my lowest point and rebound totals. Deadline the following year, traded to Cleveland for Jared Cunningham and a future second. Yeah, I was part of the 2016 title-winning Cavs. You're definitely getting it there. Traded for Isaiah Thomas, Jordan Clarkson, Larry Nance. With Isaiah Thomas for Clarkson and Larry Nance.
No Knicks clues?
No Knicks clues. He gave you an Arizona clue, not a Knicks clue.
I probably would not, honestly, now think about it, I probably wouldn't have gotten it until you mentioned the Cavs one, and then there's also the trade for Jordan Clarkson and stuff. It's probably when I would have got it.
Can I give you, Mike, also while I have the doc open, has a couple of who is Bill Walton talking about that we haven't used yet. And I want to give you I'm going to do 3 of them just because they make me laugh. Dan, who is Bill Walton talking about? Number 1.
Channing Frye.
He's like a 4-armed Dikembe Mutombo out there. Is he talking about Dikembe Mutombo? Which would be the best possible answer. Francisco Elson, Rasheed Wallace, Tony Battie, or Vin Baker?
Tony Battie.
This part doesn't even matter. It's Rasheed Wallace, but who cares? Number 2, Blank's legs look like they were sculpted by Microsoft. Couple questions. Couple questions. Does Microsoft have a sculpting arm that we don't know about, or they have an architectural firm? Whose legs look like they were sculpted by Microsoft? Deshaun Stevenson, Hassan Whiteside, Rafe LaFrentz, Yao Ming, Latrell Sprewell.
Yao Ming, Latrell Sprewell, Raif LaFrentz,
Deshaun Stevenson, or Hassan Whiteside?
I'm gonna say Raif LaFrentz.
It is in fact Yao Ming. Just Bill love
does that mean he had good or bad legs though? I don't really know what.
That's the thing. No one knows. No one knows how good Microsoft sculpts legs, I guess. All right, one more here. Which one do I want to do here? Okay, I want to do this long one because they're so funny. I hope I didn't do this one already. This is on a player acquired by Phoenix. So I don't know if that's going to help you.
Channing Frye.
This is the perfect spot for him. A symbol, if you will. It's perfect. 50,000 years ago, a meteor hit what we now know as the state of Arizona. That's what this represents, or that's what he represents. I think of the Grand Canyon, a beautiful, broad, majestic land in the city of Phoenix. Luis Scola, Marcin Gortat, Shaq, Jermaine O'Neal, Marcus Banks.
It could be literally any one of those guys. I'm going to say Marcin Gortat.
It is, in fact, Shaq, which is almost like, it almost makes sense because he's talking about the Grand Canyon and Shaq is just like the hugest guy ever. But I don't want to, oh man, I have one more. I just saw one more. The Rockets are dealing with a fully aroused blank. Michael Finley, Nick Van Exel, Kobe Bryant, Michael Doliak, Gennaro Pargo. Before you guess, Mike, the names you come up with to put in here are just like, they're so great. Michael Doliak. When's the last time you thought about Michael Doliak?
I have no idea, but now I'm not going to pick him because I'm assuming Mike put that in there. He's not the answer. So Michael Doliak, I forgot everybody.
Gennaro Pargo, another deep cut. Michael Finley, Nick Van Exel, Kobe Bryant.
I'm just going to say Nick Van Exel.
It is a fully aroused Kobe Bryant.
Damn it.
Man, these are so just a delight. I don't know. I got to save the last couple for another time because we
need to cut that up into we need to do like a actual either episode who is Bill Walton talking? Maybe we should do who is Bill Walton talking about episode. Put together your docs, Discord members. Go join our Discord, or you can come up with. But Mike killed it with those.
My favorite part about, well, I love it all, but one of my favorite parts about the whole bit is like, I'm not going to fact check these. Maybe he did say, maybe Mike's making these up. I don't care. Like, well, if he is, Mike, get a comedy writing job.
Yeah, get a Pulitzer or something like that. Just
but they're just, it's so much fun. Okay. Do you want to give me a guess a player? I have another one I can give you after.
No, let me give you two and then we can get out of here. I have one from Rubik's Gal for you. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Clue one, I received a key to the city of Oakland at the 2000 All-Star Weekend.
I really want to one-shot this. 2000, key to the city of Oakland.
I'll give you a bonus clue. They're an NBA player.
Thank you. Just trying to think of guys from Oakland. 2000. I'll say Gary Payton.
That is incorrect.
Okay.
Clue two. I was the first NBA player to hit 10 threes in a game, though I never hit more than 5 threes in a game again. It's actually pretty wild.
That's a really good clue. 10 threes in a game, never hit more than 5 after that. Oh, I think I kind of know this.
How about you give me the answer then?
I'd love to. Never made more than 5 after that. First player to hit 10.
Yeah. I didn't fact check this, so I'm just going to say yes.
It's like, why do I want to say like Michael Adams? That's probably way off. Okay, I don't have it yet.
It's not Michael Adams.
Yeah. Okay.
Clue three, I logged 943 games playing in both guard positions and made 10 plus points per game in only 2 seasons, averaged 6 plus assists, only once. Obviously, my intangible contributions as a teammate far exceeded my counting stats.
Oh, that's interesting. Tangible contributions as a teammate. So it's a combo guard. The fact that like, now I'm hung up on who would have been an all-star in 2000, but clearly that's not this guy because he averaged 10 points a game, you said?
Correct. Only once. Or was it, what was it? It was averaged 10 plus points per game in only 2 seasons. It was twice.
So who made 10 threes, never made more than 5? Yeah, I don't know.
Clue 4. My only head coaching stint in the NBA was not a success, but I am a highly respected assistant coach. I have 2 rings as an assistant to go with 3 as a player.
Oh, man. He won 3 titles? Highly respected assistant coach. Oh, I'm on tilt right now. These clues are there's such a diversity of information coming through here. So key to the city of Oakland, 10 points a game, made 10 threes once, but never more than 5. And an assistant coach, but it was a bad head coach. God, that could be so many guys. All right. I don't have it.
Clue 5. I am one of 2 people to have played at least 150 games with both the Lakers and the Celtics.
That's a good clue. That is a good clue. So we got a guard that hit a bunch of threes, played for the Lakers and the Celtics. 2000 key to the city. Ugh. I mean, who's hitting 10 threes for either of the... Well, I guess it... Lakers and the Celtics. I mean, getting a key to the city in 2000. I don't have it. I don't know.
Well, you have a couple more clues. You might get it. Clue 6. I am half of arguably the coolest named basketball duo ever. The nickname was given by the other half of the duo, a Hall of Fame center.
What? Hall of Fame center. Is this do you know the nickname? Is this something you know?
No.
Okay, well, that makes me feel a little better. All right. I'm going to need the last clue.
Well, there's 2 more.
Okay, great.
Clue 7. I was there when Latrell Sprewell choked PJ Carlesimo, an incident I talked about on Paul George's podcast.
Oh, this is Brian Shaw.
Correct. The final clue was I reportedly dated Madonna back in the 90s.
I would not have got that one. Oh,
Do you
okay.
remember when he accused like the Nuggets when he was coaching them of trying to lose on purpose?
Well, was that the like Iguodala is like a mole? Was that part of the same thing?
And it was like in 2015 or something. It was like he suspected his players were trying to lose, or it was like we're going out there with guys who are competing and we're not competing back or something. It was the most bizarre thing.
God, now all the clues, believe it or not, now all the clues make sense. The key to the city, because I think he is from Oakland. The Lakers. Okay, man, good one. That was a good one. That is a sufficiently obscure player with also correctly escalating in ease clues. You're gonna get it, but you're gonna work for it. Good one. Good one.
Are you ready to get into the mind of a psychopath?
Oh, let's see. I am now. I'm ready.
He abbreviated this as GAP, by the way, which I didn't realize our guess a player. We could have the acronym for GAP.
Okay.
So we can now fall into, or don't finish my sentences. I guess we're not on that same page. Look, we just dropped from number 1 on the charts worldwide to probably number 2. Thanks a lot, Grant.
I was in the mind of a psychopath, not a good yes and improviser. It can't do both at the same time.
Clue number 1. I was a first-round non-lottery pick in 2000, drafted by a Western Conference team. My pick was traded 4 times before I was actually drafted.
I got nothing there.
Clue 2. In my 13-year career, I was a sub 40% field goal shooter. In other news, I was never an all-star.
Bad shooter drafted in 2000. Okay.
Clue 3. My best season was my 4th when I averaged 17 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists. I finished 13th in the most improved player voting.
Is this Quentin Richardson?
Correct. Nice job. Other clues. This one's wild. My top 4 most similar players are Adrian Smith, Aaron Aflalo, Raja Bell, and Gerald Henderson. This clue is purposefully unhelpful.
Success. That is very unhelpful.
The other 3 were with the 7 seconds or less Suns. I averaged 8 attempts from 3 per game across 78 regular season starts. Second to last clue, I finished my career with a bang, playing 1 regular season game for the Knicks, 29 minutes, and going 1 of 11 from the field in those 29 minutes. I was most likely wearing a headband while doing so. And then final clue, I share the surname with one of the greatest 3-point shooters in Santa Clara intramural basketball history.
That's such a I'm not going to dignify that with a response. Bill could really shoot it. I don't know. That is factual. Excellent 3-point shooter. Quentin Richardson. I feel good about that one. I feel like I got that.
You got on 3. That was sufficient. Yeah, great. That was a good rendition of Gap. Can't wait to fall into
the Gap
next time. Do you want to take us out of here? Is it nighttime by you? Is anyone watching?
I don't know what happened. Like, hold on, I'm gonna pump up my light just because why not? I don't know. Maybe some cloud cover there. That's now it feels like I'm really in the dark. That doesn't help.
You like disappeared.
Yeah, I mean that's when you get into the mind of a psychopath, things get a little dark.
That shit got really emo real fast.
Got dark in a hurry. Thanks for the guest players. Thanks for the all of the bonus stat padding content, Bill Walton things especially. Please remember, as always, rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends about this podcast, show them clips on YouTube, play them me failing to pick up the fall into the gap that Dan laid out for me, and say like they're still trying to get better, so there's upside for this podcast. If you are interested in our merch or joining our Discord, links for that are in the YouTube and podcast description. That's going to do it. We will have something else coming this week, I think, or maybe early next week. I don't want to make any promises, but as always, shouts, Frank Ntilikina, apologies, Jared Allen.